All right, so we're in the week 6 reading for living environment, section 3, genetic variation results, structural, functional, and behavioral changes. And again, this is on page 6 to 7. So in this section, we're going to highlight details that describe results or the effects of variation, as well as how variation impacts the survival of members within a species. The changes that result from mutations or genetic recombination in sex cells may affect the offspring in many ways. Most of the changes can be categorized as structural, functional, or behavioral. Structural change. The structure of an organism is the result of the species' entire evolutionary history. Let's highlight that. There are millions of examples of variations that have resulted from structural changes. For example, the polar bear, like other polar bears, has thick fur that keeps it warm in cold environments. Polar bears, however, have evolved from an extra protection from the cold. The soles of their feet are mostly covered with thick fur. The extra fur not only keeps their skin off the ice, but it also improves traction. The theory of evolution has helped scientists explain many of the structural variations and similarities found in organisms. For example, in figure 5.6, notice that each limb has one long bone and two thinner bones, and a hand with 5 digits. The ancestor of these animals is most likely had the similar limb structure. At one point, however, limbs began to vary, evolving into arms, legs, and wings. Structures that are no longer used by modern organisms give scientists clues to the evolutionary history of a species. Some snakes, for example, had tiny non-functional leg bones, which is an indication that they probably evolved from 4-legged lizard-like ancestors. So right now on your own, you're going to explain what is a structural change and give an example. Now, functional change. Molecular or biochemical changes can affect how an organism works. Those are functional changes. Let's highlight that. For example, all working muscles emit an extremely tiny electrical output. In some eels, however, that electrical output has evolved into an adaptation that helps it find and capture food. The muscles of these eels can produce a massive shock that stuns or kills its prey. Changes in DNA often lead to functional changes. Let's highlight that. One example is the mutation in DNA of certain one-celled organisms that led to their ability to make enzymes that digest wood. Another is the evolution of the ability of some snakes to make poisonous venom. So right now you're going to pause and answer what is a functional characteristic and give an example. Behavioral change. Behaviors have also evolved through natural selection. Many of the specific behaviors we find in species today have become common because they resulted in greater reproductive success. For example, fighting among the males of a walrus population for a harem of females is one evolved behavior. Because of the fighting, the stronger, healthier male mates with the most females. The correct rate of blinking allows males and females of firefly species to find each other. A different pattern or rate of blinking would isolate the individual from potential mates. So right now you're going to answer your CFU, which is what is a behavioral change, and give an example. The importance of variation. If environmental conditions change, organisms that have adapted to those conditions may die. Let's highlight that. If all the members of the species had exactly the same combinations of characteristics, an environmental change could be disastrous, wiping out the entire species. So the variation of organisms within a species increases the likelihood that at least some members of the species will survive in a changed environment. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that whole paragraph. It's really important. Once the diversity present in a species is lost, it's next to impossible to get it back. Today's endangered species have such small populations that biologists worry that they might not have the genetic diversity to adapt even to slight changes in the environment. So now you're going to summarize in your own words, why is variation important And why are some species endangered today?